Struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Coretta Scott King, civil rights leader. What I love about Juneteenth is that even in that extended wait, we still find something to celebrate. Even though the story has never been tidy, and Black folks have had to march and fight for every inch of our freedom, our story is nonetheless one of progress. Michelle Obama, former First Lady of the United States.
Welcome to Check This Out, podcast for kids.
And their grown-ups, where we explore people, places, ponderings, and past moments from history that shape the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
Listeners, we're so happy you continue to tune in with us as we keep making new episodes of the podcast.
Thanks for listening.
We just wrapped up a series on the 7 natural wonders of the world. Today is our 39th episode of Check This Out. And today we are going to talk about Juneteenth, what it is, why it exists, why it's important, and if you've never heard of it before, ways to learn more. It's going to be a great episode and just in time for the Juneteenth holiday in a couple of days.
I'm excited to learn more.
Yes, I can't wait to get into it, but I want to catch our listeners up on a few things first. If you're just joining us, there are lots of fun episodes to explore. We like to do things in series around here. So instead of boring you with a list of specific episodes we've done up to this point or topics we've discussed, I'll tell you about the other series we've done up to now.
Here's a quick overview.
We kicked off our podcast exploring the history of 10 famous Americans.
Any guesses who they were?
We introduced listeners to people like Helen Keller, Benjamin Franklin, Martin Luther King Jr., and Harriet Tubman.
I remember hearing about that.
Me too, Cece. And there were even more people than just the names I mentioned right now. Check out our Famous American series if you want to learn more. After the Famous American series, we did a series on
women who changed the world.
Some of our most popular episodes in that series were Anne Frank, Marie Curie, and Rosa Parks.
They did so much.
They did indeed. Listeners, you'll have to tune into those episodes to learn why. After Famous Americans and Women Who Changed the World, we did a series of mini episodes on the first 7 presidents of the United States. Pop quiz. Do you know who the first 7 presidents of the United States were? What about our first president?
George Washington.
That's right, Cece. George Washington was indeed our first president. Then came John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, John Quincy Adams, James Madison, John Monroe, and Andrew Jackson. Then we most recently wrapped up our series on the 7 natural wonders of the world and journeyed around the globe to learn about some of these amazing places like
the Grand Canyon, the Great Barrier Reef, Mount Everest.
Now that you're all caught up on what's been going on at Check This Out podcast, we can introduce you to our newest series and today's episode on Juneteenth.
First things first.
Our next series is going to be all about past moments from history around the world. We'll be talking about past moments such as the moon landing and the fall of the Berlin Wall, the French Revolution, and more. And to kick things off, we're talking about a past moment from history, Juneteenth.
What is it?
Great question, Cece. Check this out, community. Does your school talk about Juneteenth? Have you learned about this past moment from history and why it's so important? It's okay if you know a little bit, a lot, or nothing at all. It's all good, because we're going to learn about it together and why it's celebrated as a holiday in the United States today.
Let's get into it.
Juneteenth is a holiday that celebrates the end of slavery in the United States. It's called Juneteenth because it's short for the date that it happened, June 19th.
Check this out.
In 1863, during the American Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This was an important document that said more than 3 million enslaved people living in the Confederate States were now free. But back in 1863, things like phones and the internet didn't exist. So many enslaved people couldn't read, and word traveled slowly with the news of the Emancipation Proclamation. For enslaved people who lived further away from the centralized Confederate States, more than 2 years would pass before the news reached the enslaved people living in Texas that they were free.
Oh no!
Texas was the westernmost Confederate state, and it was farther away than all the other ones. So when Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas on June 19th in 1865 to share the news, that is when the state's residents finally learned that slavery had been abolished.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so even though enslaved people were technically freed in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation, the ones living in Texas didn't know for 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Texas was so far west, it took a long time for the news to reach the people living there. And slave owners would often withhold this information, not telling the enslaved people that they were free.
That is not okay.
The original Juneteenth celebration happened on June 19, 1865, when Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas. They shared the news that more than 250,000 enslaved Black people in the state were now free.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, today some people consider Juneteenth to be the second American Independence Day because it is the official end of slavery in the United States.
A lot was happening.
June 19th quickly became a day of celebration across the United States. This past moment, which is now celebrated as a federal holiday, was created, preserved, and spread by the Black community. Today, Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and emphasizes education and achievement. One of the earliest documented land purchases in the name of Juneteenth was organized by a man named Reverend Jack Yates. He raised $1,000 to purchase Emancipation Park in Houston. It's still there today, and it's a popular place for Juneteenth gatherings.
Good for him.
The celebration of this past moment from history grew in popularity after the Great Depression. In 1936, around 175,000 people joined in on the Juneteenth celebration in Dallas, and 70,000 attended a Juneteenth jamboree in 1951. But it wasn't an official holiday.
Why does that matter?
The United States has a long history of struggling with racism, and Juneteenth is a moment of celebration of freedom for the Black community. But it also calls out and forces the United States to face the racist history of our country.
Fair enough.
Dr. Opal Lee was one of the driving forces in establishing a national observance of Juneteenth as a federal holiday. On June 17, 2021, it officially became a federal holiday. Dr. Lee is known as the grandmother of Juneteenth, and she was present when President Joe Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act bill, which established Juneteenth as a federal holiday.
How incredible! That's amazing.
Check this out. When Dr. Lee was 90 years old, she started a walking campaign from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. to bring awareness about Juneteenth and how it should be a national holiday. She walked 2.5 miles in cities all across the United States to represent the 2.5 years it took after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation for freedom to reach the enslaved folks in Texas. In 2019, she also launched an online petition and got 1.6 million signatures to help make Juneteenth a holiday.
What an amazing story!
Did you know that Juneteenth has a flag?
What?
Well, it does. The Juneteenth flag is red, white, and blue and was created in 1997 by a man named Ben Hythe.
That is cool.
Although the first Juneteenth was celebrated when the announcement came, the first official commemorative holiday was celebrated in 1866, the year after the announcement came to Texas. The celebration and importance of Juneteenth lives on, and it will happen soon on June 19th of 2025.
I can't wait.
I'm so glad, Cece. But as you look forward to learning more about Black history and experiences, remember this important fact. On June 19th in 1865, U.S. Major General Gordon Granger performed a public reading of General Order No. 3. And here's what it said. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freed men are advised to remain quietly at the present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. This celebration, Juneteenth, exists because people were enslaved against their will, and this was a step towards freedom.
That's a big deal.
Here's a great quote that I think is really poignant. Juneteenth is an opportunity to both look back, but to look ahead, to make sure that the notion of freedom and the fragility of it is always protected and celebrated. Lonnie Bunch, educator and historian.
What a great quote.
Normally at the end of our podcast, we write you a poem about what we talked about. And we normally love to do that. But there are so many beautiful poems and quotes by Black voices that embody Juneteenth. We thought this would be a great opportunity to highlight them instead of write a new poem for you. So here are a couple. The first is a poem called Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Here's another one. This is an excerpt from Langston Hughes' Let America Be America Again, and it was originally written in 1935. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. We have one more quote for you, and it's a really powerful one. It's by a community organizer named O'Brien Rosario. Juneteenth was a promise that was broken. Reconstruction failed, and this country has continued to wage war on the Black body. Juneteenth also embodies the resilience of Black people. Even in the face of a broken system, we choose to find joy in resistance and celebrate in community. How are you going to learn about Juneteenth? How are you going to celebrate Juneteenth with your family? Will you read books by Black authors? Learn more about the history of slavery in the United States? Will you watch a show about Juneteenth and why it's important? Will you attend a Juneteenth celebration? Tell us how you're honoring the people who waited 2.5 years for their freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation. We would love to hear from you. Here at the Check This Out podcast, we know there's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming. This podcast is a tool for you to help you do something called citing your sources. On Check This Out, we use verified sources to build the stories you hear about.
Our sources are
the National Museum of African American History and Culture, History.com, Encyclopedia Britannica, Women'sHistory.org, PBS, and National Geographic. Tune back in with us on June 23rd for an episode featuring Past Moment from History on the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This was the moment that ignited World War I. Join us to learn more.
Thanks for listening. See you next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.